Hello and welcome to an unexpected podcast. My name is Tim, and with me as always, we have Matt, Mick, and Devin. Unfortunately, Rainier couldn't be with us this week. On this week's episode, we're going to be going over the list from Gabriel Shackett, and then we're going to be going over the scenario breakthrough. I know, Matt, you wanted to speak about something beforehand, though.
Yeah, so you may remember a couple weeks ago now on Halloween, we did our Angmar episode, or just before Halloween, and we discussed a no-might Angmar list. And I actually decided I was going to try that and pulled it out and did. I know somebody put up a list that had called a no-might Angmar list that had the Witch King in it with no might bought for the Witch King, but I went the traditional way and I had Dwemer Lake, Shade, 2 Barrow Whites, and then just a whole bunch of orcs and I think like 2 Warg Riders. And it was actually it was a fun list to play. I mean, I played it against a player who's a smart player but a new player, so I'm not sure it was a huge stress test of the list, but it was, there are definitely tactics in that list that you can use. I mean, you're definitely fighting in your death ball, and as long as you have a scenario that promotes death ball fighting, and we had Lords of Battle, you can make a viable list at it. And I mean, a couple lessons that came away from that game were, one, you should always take a few orcs with bows, even in an Angmar list, because I ended up playing against a Mordor list that had no bows, and my 5 orc archers were able to successfully drag my opponent toward me after shooting a Morgul Knight off his horse and killing a Black Numenorian. Thus, I think, like tripling their point spend. And
actually shocked you didn't play the Witch King with 0 might over the Dwemer Lake.
Nah, that's not the way to do it.
Just
that's not no might. That's no might Angmar gimmick. That's not the. And yeah, so the Dwemer Lake is kind of an interesting guy to sit in the middle of that ball and make sure that the Dwemer Lake, kind of in combination with the Barrow Whites, kind of like running the Dwemer Lake and a Barrow White up simultaneously, so that when the Barrow White casts, the Dwemer Lake can make the guy potentially double his will spend to resist that paralyze is pretty useful thing to do. And my opponent had the Witch King on Fellbeast running around, so he did not want to get paralyzed off of that Fellbeast, but eventually did. I mean, there's all sorts of other tricks you can use with the Dwemer Lake, just with casting his spells, like and the turn you go up first, get within 6 inches, the Dwemer Lake can force the other guy to potentially double his will when he's resisting kind of the first barrage. But then you can also do stuff like hit him with one Barrow White, force him to spend a bunch of will to resist, and then hit him with a compel from the Dwemer Lake, and the guy's like, oh, I got to save some will here, so I'm not going to resist this compel, and then compel him within 6 inches of the other Barrow White, who then hits him with a second paralyze. So kind of neat tricks you can do when you're fighting your battle of the central position. Anyway, it's a fun list. Again, I'm not going to take it to a tournament, but there's neat stuff you can do with it.
Oh man, I was going to guess. I was going to be like, so anyone who's seen the other scenario review episodes where we do these new scenarios, we often pick up lists that, we talk about how we play that list in the scenario of different types. And I was going to call it out. I was going to be like, this list is foreshadowing of what Matt selected for this scenario breakthrough. I'm calling it now. I don't know, but that's what I'm going to go with. So what about our list review, Tim? Just curious, what do we got for that?
So I will move it over to Matt, but our list is from Gabriel Shackett this week.
All right, so Gabriel has a Defenders of Helm's Deep Legendary Legion list at 800 points. And he has Warband 1, which is Theoden with heavy armor and shield, 4 Galadrim warriors with shield, 2 warriors of Rohan with shield, 5 warriors of Rohan with throwing spear and shield, and then Warband 2, which is Aragorn, Strider with armor. He has with him Haleth, 5 warriors of Rohan with shield, 3 warriors of Rohan with throwing spear and shield, 2 Rohan Royal Guard with Throwing Spear. And Warband 3 is Gambling with the Royal Standard of Rohan. Aldor, who's one of the new hero. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have mentioned Haleth. Haleth is the new hero. He's the I think he's Gambling's son. And
he's a little boy.
Yeah, he's a little boy that runs around that, among other things, will up Aragorn to fight 7 if Haleth is fighting within 3 inches of him. So this Haleth is appropriately deployed in Aragorn's warband here. Then we have Aldor, who, if you recall from the movie, he's one of the new heroes. He's the guy with the shaking hand at the beginning of the Siege of Helm's Deep who manages to shoot an Uruk-hai in the throat in the opening scene. And he appropriately is sitting in Gambling's warband, so he can benefit from the free point of might rebuild that he gets. So he can be spending his might plus I think he gets a free point of might when he shoots. And with him are 5 Galadrim warriors with bow, 3 Galadrim warriors with spear and bow, 2 warriors of Rohan with bow, and then Warband 4 is Legolas with armor. So I think this list has all the heroes you would want in this list. I mean, the traditional build out with this list is Theoden gambling with Banner, Aragorn, Haleth, and Aldor, and then you either take Legolas with this list or you spend it to get kind of more guys. I think you can probably fit more guys in this list. And I think that's really the only thing that's wrong with it is it's a little light on models at 37. But there's ways to do this more efficiently. And I'll kind of make my comment about, I think, the most efficient way to build out this list with warriors. And so this is one of the other benefits of this list is, nobody can be on a horse. Your bows have a 30-inch range, and the throwing spears, the Rohan throwing spears, can be used as regular spears, so you can fight in 2 ranks if you want to. However, with that said, generally the most points efficient way to build out this list I've found is with warriors of Rohan with shield in the front rank, and then Galadrim warriors with with spear and bow in the second rank. And I think the warriors of Rohan with a throwing spear and a shield point out at 9 points a figure. For 12 points a figure, instead, you can get a Galadrim warrior with the spear and bow, which gives you basically fight 5, the ability to shoot, and basically the ability to support at fight 5, as well as shoot. And that's generally enough guys in the rear rank. I mean, if you want to, you can throw in some warriors of Rohan with throwing spear and shield if you want to build up your second rank. But that warriors of Rohan with just the shield in the front, and then using the elves to back up and give your bow support, I think is the most efficient way to build this list, and will kind of give you the numbers that you need. And you probably want to throw in a few Rohan Royal Guard to get some bodyguard troops in there, and you can throw in some, if you have some points left over and some bow slots left over, you can throw in some cheap Rohan archers if you want. But I think your 2 big troops are the warriors of Rohan with shield and the Galadrim warriors with the spear and the bow. And I don't think you buy any Galadrim warriors who don't have spear, because I think they're just too pricey. Those are my thoughts.
Whoa, I think Matt's covered most of it.
Yeah.
I haven't personally played this list before, Defenders of Helm's Deep. However, I've seen. I remember watching one of the GTs. I think it might have been last year, or I think it was last year.
It was this past one, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think Jay Clare was using a 700-point version of this list, and I believe the only major difference was that obviously at 700 I don't think he had Legolas, but his numbers were pretty much the same, and all the heroes were pretty much the same, and he ended up winning the GT with it. So my only thought here is, well, if you feel confident enough to be playing with Legolas, then do it. that's great. However, since you mentioned that you're only just starting and you're fairly new to the game, it might be easier for you at the beginning to actually increase your numbers and not use Legolas, because there are things with Legolas which are very, very, very specific, like knowing where to put him, knowing where when to get him into combat, and exactly what to shoot. And these things often come with experience. So the alternative here would be to spend the 90 points you're spending on him, or even 100, to just bulk up all of your warbunds to have as many wars as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely, because especially since he's a new player, 37 models already, as Matt mentioned, is already light, especially when you factor in everyone's defense 5, and you have no mobility to kind of really get around and support and hit flanks, as effectively as some other armies could. And yeah, Legolas, I think there's going to be a temptation as a new player to just sit him back and just have him shooting for way too long, in which case you have like 90 points or really 195 or 100 something, just sitting back. Just so I'm clear on the Legion rules, I believe some of the things about this Legion is you can only have like 1/3 elves. Am I correct on that? I think it's like 1/3. So if someone could look, yeah. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember it seeing. I think it was.
I'll look up. Keep talking. I'll look that up.
So if it's 1/3 elves, and I guess Tim, you can just calculate it. What is 1/3 of 37? I mean, if you kept
12
and 1/3.
Okay.
Well, minus heroes, I think.
So let's see how many heroes are there.
Oh, is it minus the? No, because I don't think it operates like the bow limit. Like the bow limit minuses the heroes, but I don't think this does. So you think you include the heroes?
Maximum 1/3 elves.
So it's 12.33 repeating.
All right.
I'm sorry.
So
I should correct. Maximum 1/3 with the Lorien keyword. So Legolas doesn't count as an elf.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I mean, but obviously our advice here is to get rid of
minus
Legolas
heroes
anyway.
In that case here.
Yeah. But our advice was to get rid of Legolas anyway. Yeah. But if he has 12, and I think in this current list he has 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so he has 12 total. So in that case, okay, he's fine there. And I guess humans can lead them, I suppose.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no stipulation.
Yeah, they can be mixed in.
And then Aldor, is he not a minor hero? Is he actually independent?
Yeah, I think he.
So that's the other thing I was just curious about. But I mean, if that's all correct, then
I think he is.
Great. I think we're good to go.
I'll double check that too.
Aldor being in Gambling's Warband, smart move. Love that option. For anyone who doesn't know, he just keeps getting this might back to.
Aldor and Haleth are both independent heroes.
Okay, perfect. So Aldor being in Gambling's Warband is great. Then you have Haleth and Aragorn's Warband, as mentioned. Yeah, he boosts Aragorn to fight 7. He has heroic defense that allows him to hold himself alive, keep himself alive. There is a temptation to kind of get gambling around him, in which case you would have, well, I guess Aldor would be away from him by the time combat's hit, but you'd have like gambling, Aragorn, and Haleth all kind of like centered in one little spot. And then I guess if that happens, you only have Theoden to one side. So, I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but would you play, like, once combat actually meets, would you end up playing Gambling, Aragorn, and Haleth all in this like bubble, which case Theoden's like kind of off to one side?
If you can get away with it, yes.
Sure.
It depends on the scenario.
Yeah,
sometimes you got to go and do different things.
If your opponent allows you, or maybe they haven't played this list before and don't realize what you can do, you try to get away with it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I have actually played, because I played a list very similar to this, and I did have to split up for that. And basically I took Theoden, Gambling, and Aldor and had them on one side of the board, and I had Aragorn, Haleth, and Legolas on the other side of the board.
Okay. Then I guess in your experience with Legolas, Matt, was he pivotal? So like if we were advising an expert player with this.
So the reason it was pivotal in my game was because I was playing the Siege of Helm's Deep list, and he was necessary to kill everybody with a torch, so that the bomb would never go off. I mean, I think,
certain circumstance there, but
yeah, but I mean, he does give you a lot of flexibility, because remember, you're an entirely foot list, so Legolas is
dropping the horses.
Very useful for dropping horses, and I think if you drop a bunch of Galadrim warriors here. Basically, I think what I would do is I would drop the 4 Galadrim warriors with shield, I would give spears to the 5 Galadrim warriors with bow. And then I would take the rest of the points and I would buy either Warriors of Rohan with bow or Warriors of Rohan with shield. I would also probably drop a bunch of the throwing spears off the Warriors of Rohan. And you can, I think, get comfortably up into the low 40s of model counts with this, with Legolas. And I think that's enough figures.
Are we just so I make sure about this? Are we positive that it's still? I know that anybody can lead them, but are we sure that we can have 12 with shield, 12 with not shield? You know what I mean, like 12 with bow for the Galadrim, or is it still kind of where they have to be?
So the Legion by default makes it where anyone can lead anyone unless we're set.
So it doesn't restrict it in that regard. Okay.
Yeah, by the Legion format, they are heroes, and these are the warriors.
Okay.
And heroes can lead your warriors. So it has to actually say you can't do that.
That's probably why they divided it like that.
I mean,
can I just ask a couple of things? One is it the case in the Legion that only Galadrim warriors with bows have the 30-inch range, or is it
no, all of them?
No, everybody with a bow.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
If you're stationary, you have to be stationary.
Sure.
Oh, so then, really?
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess one other thing here I just wanted to add was that you have 37 models but 6 heroes. So out of the 31 warriors, you've given 10 bows, but you can actually have 11. So always try to maximize that.
Yeah, especially if you're
a little
focusing on that. So I guess to elite players, the advice actually would be to keep Legolas in the list, but then to this particular player, we're saying take him out. So,
I guess I'm on the fence about that. Like I said, I think if he more efficiently spent his points on warriors and got the number of warriors up in the low 40s, I don't see any problem with him keeping Legolas in this list.
Then, I always hesitate to take Galadrim out because do the 5/5 boost. But if you're getting more spears anyway, then reasonably your line shouldn't be more than 8 people wide in most places anyway. So you're really just accounting for the death of some Galadrim by having many extras.
Yeah,
so I'm not,
and he's got Galadrim warriors with shield, which
that you wouldn't even bother with that.
That's 10 points a pop right there. That's 40 points, which he can go and that's like 5. Is it? Actually, it's probably more than 5 and some change Rohan right there, and he can probably so he could probably so that's going to give you some more guys.
I was gonna say, I think you should be able to, if you're going based on the third elves, let's say a third of them with throwing spear and shield and a third with just shield. I mean, you could probably add about 8 to 9 more models if you got rid of Legolas.
Yeah. So I want to give this advice. So I think Gabriel knows, like for him, specifically him, we probably would remove Legolas, bulk up on some more troops, keep the 1/3 elves, make sure they all have spears to go in the rear, and add them all to Theoden's warband, get a lot of warriors Rohan. But I'm now trying to format our thoughts toward a player who is maybe not so new and is a little bit more experienced. Well, now we're saying, okay, well, Legolas is necessary, and I don't know. Mick, did Jay have Legolas in his list? I'm just curious, purely.
Well, no, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was 700 points at the time.
So he probably wouldn't have been able to afford that anyway.
I don't think he would have taken Legolas then. I don't remember, to be fair. But at 700, I can't really see that. You dropped.
I've taken a 700 point list with Legolas in it.
I mean, if you did do that, I guess you would get rid of. I can't even think about it because I'd be real hesitant to get rid of Aragorn, but it's not 700. I mean,
you don't get rid of Aragorn.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was thinking about Aldor a little bit, and I mean, he's a gimmick for 20 points, but he's really nice because he's basically a free heroic move every single turn. And, while he's around gambling, and that's obviously once the combat's hit, but if he's not around gambling, his role diminishes to just a tax. And so, I mean, I'm not sure if it's just worth considering getting rid of him to add in a couple guys.
So you only get 3. You probably get 2 guys out of that. Is that
probably it? And then you'd get spears and shields.
2 or 3 guys.
So what?
Because you already have Aragorn, and Aragorn fulfills his role at both.
You'd have 11 plus might without Legolas, and I mean your might is already set in that department. So what I'll ask you guys is, in your opinion, if you were to run this list at 800 points, does Legolas make it in it? Yes or no?
Yeah, well, I think we all said yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I mean, Haldir is also a cheaper option, if you want to,
Yep, Haldir.
if you want to get some points back and still have another hero that's in there.
Yeah, nobody wants Aldor though.
That's true. I mean,
if you're gonna have Legolas, then
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to pass up Legolas and how why would you, for such little amount of point difference, the difference in qualities.
That's a fair. Point.
Unless one of those situations where you want to change your game into, let's say, from medium level to hard, and you just want to up the difficulty level.
Yeah.
Give yourself a challenge.
So, I mean, I'm trying to just think about these heroes. Otherwise, yeah, Aldor is one of those where it's like, maybe. Like, he's cool, I guess.
The other thing to remember about this list is that the heroes are really what kind of make this list dangerous.
Yeah. What's Aldor doing?
Well, Aldor is like a random guy who stands near gambling and shoots people. and I mean, he actually is a really scary guy when he's standing near gambling and shooting people. I mean, a couple of times actually, I've played him. It's been on one of those boards that has one of those, the Ruins of Osgiliath terrain pieces that has like the little second level that's like 2.5 inches up.
Yeah,
those are so unfair.
You put gambling.
Yeah,
that you put Aldor on top where he's still within 3 inches, and he's just like this little turret that just shoots people out of the back rank.
I have so many bad experiences with that terrain set. When you just put him up there, it's so hard to get him off. Oh,
you don't want to put Legolas up there because you don't want him to fight later. But there's really no downside to putting Aldor up there.
Other than calling free heroic moves on the other side of the field. But you're always going to have gambling around Aragorn anyway. So it's like, yeah, Aldor, as soon as combat hits, you really got to hope you made your 20 points back up. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, Spears in the Galadrim, if we're talking to a player who like is going to bring this in experience mode, I mean, sorry. But yeah, other than that, I'm like, I can't. What I do know is he's bow heavy on one warband, so he's automatically throwing all his range firepower in one place. Mm-hmm. And I know if Rainier was here, he would be, giving his usual speech about that. So I'll speak for him and say it's possible. But the problem is the ones with the So here's the reason I also would redistribute the ones you're trying to redistribute. Really, the Galadrim. And it's mostly so you always have that 5/5 in different warbands in case Maelstrom or whatever, if you get to go wide deployments. You probably don't want all your elves in the same place, especially if like for some reason gambling ends up somewhere else. Now you've lost all your 5/5 to just somewhere else in the battlefield. So I actually would distribute these Galadrim warriors as evenly as possible, especially giving them spears. So that's one criticism automatically I'm going to say right off the bat is redistribute your bows around because your bows are your 5/5 spear supports. I do like Matt's idea about some Royal Guard if you can afford it. I'm trying to think about it in this list, and that's
he's got 2 in there, and I think that's probably 2 or 3.
Oh, does he have 2? Oh, he does. That's probably enough then. Yeah. In this list, this is enough. Yeah. So realistically, I think if you wanted to change anything about this list, I mean, the only consideration I would think of is like you take Aldor away, and I know you only get like 2 or 3 guys. That's why I'm like maybe if you were to upgrade maybe more to Royal Guard for the defense bonus, but then otherwise, I mean, I guess really hope you make your points back with Aldor, like getting the 20 points. But that's realistically it for me. I mean, otherwise, these Legion lists, I mean, there's so few ways you can build them. So, I mean, this is pretty much, I think, very equivalent to what Jay had. And not to say like Jay's the NLB all of it, but he obviously proves the list is successful in this format. And at 800 points, I mean, the only thing is, I would say, is like some of your Rohirrim don't have shields. Like your Royal Guard don't have shields. That's your defense 6. I would get shields on everyone who doesn't have a bow.
Yeah. And I also don't think you need. There's a bunch of throwing spears here that you don't need. I mean, in this list, the 2 points for the throwing spear is less of a points inefficiency than it is regularly because you're paying 1 point for a throwing spear and 1 point for a regular spear. But especially if you're going to be equipping a bunch of your Galadrim warriors with spears, the job of the Rohan is just to kind of stand in front and soak up damage, and making them into kind of these 9 point figures for a warrior of Rohan with throwing spear and shield.
It's basically an orc. for
He also
now.
he basically has too many spears if he's doing any kind of battle lines. He's got like everyone's got a spear around here. I mean, how many points is he spending on spears? Is like 10, 20 points on spears, throwing 3 spears.
Yeah.
So that's quite
so there's some points there to get back. Like I said, I mean, I think you can comfortably get this into the low 40 models, and I think that's with 1, 2, 3, 4 real heroes. I think that's plenty.
Yeah. So I guess that's, unless anyone else disagrees about my criticism of Aldor, I think that's pretty much the advice. Equip Gladrimer spears, redistribute them, give shields where you can give shields, maybe drop some throwing spears in order to do that if you're not throwing away Aldor. And yeah, I mean, does anyone disagree with any of that?
No.
Nope.
I know Matt did say one piece of advice that like we didn't comment on, which was the dropping Galadrim for, more Rohirrim. That is not a bad idea. However, I can see the merits of keeping your 1/3 fight 5. But if you're not going to drop the throwing spears, you're not going to drop Aldor, then that's probably the route you're going to have to go. So that's just another option if you're going to redistribute a little bit more. So, and I guess, give everyone a horse, man. Ride out and meet them. Stop hiding behind the walls. I don't get it.
Okay. Thank you for your list, Gabriel. If you have any thoughts on what we had, please leave those in the comment section below. If anybody else has a list, leave that in the comments below as well. I will move on to the main topic for today, which is the scenario breakthrough. So I'm just going to go over the scenario real quick, and then we'll get into speaking about what we think about it. And then we each have written a list, what we think would be good at this scenario. So the layout is there are 4 objectives placed 12 inches apart in a diamond shaped from the center of the board. And basically you'll be on one half, your opponent will be on the other half. And the person who wins priority chooses, of course. The game lasts till a quarter, so it's not 50% on 1 or 2, which I actually really like. It makes it more interesting. The victory points are you get 1 victory point if you have more models within the objective in your half. You get 1 victory point if there are more friendly models within 3 inches of either of the 2 center objectives, and you get 2 victory points if you have more models within the 2 center objectives and there's no enemy models within the 2 center objectives. You score 2 victory points if there are more friendly models than enemy models within 3 inches of your opponent's objective on their half. And you get 4 victory points if you have more in their end and they have 0 in their end. You score 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wound on the enemy leader, 2 for killing, and you get 1 for breaking. There is no 3 of breaking, unbreaking. So what are your guys' initial thoughts on the scenario?
So I personally, I thought this scenario was really interesting. The fact that it's very tight deployment. So you have 12 inches is basically like if you make a 12-inch circle, essentially, is whatever. I mean, how do you say it? Like the radius?
12-inch radius.
12-inch radius. All right, that lost me today. So it's 12-inch radius. That, I mean, every single one of your guys can easily get to another objective within like 2 turns at minimum, pretty much, unless you're playing hobbits. And so everything is, in fact, no, because it's a 3-inch radius around it. I mean, around each objective that you need to be, you can get to an objective practically almost in a turn, depending. So it's very, very tight. Everything's going to be matched up. I like the scenario that it basically forces you to attack the other side, which we'll get into in a little bit, because I think there's some ways to game that. But basically the objective on your opponent's side, you want to go for that. And there's almost this feeling of abandoning your own on your own side because it's only giving you 1 point. But then that also gives your opponent the most amount of points. So not really that possible. So, I mean, that's just some initial like quick thoughts. I'll let everyone else say their quick thoughts. I don't know if Mick, did you have?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to like in detail analyze the way that points are scored. And is it correct that so the maximum you can get for your own objective is 1, for your opponent's maximum is 4, and then for the other 2 the maximum is 2 each, right?
Yep.
So
Yes.
You could abandon the 2 on the sides. Yeah.
So like if you were to somehow decide, okay, well, I'm just gonna take my line, I'm gonna sort of shift it 90 degrees. And if you're somehow able to control your own and your opponent's, then you're scoring more points than your opponent controlling the other 2.
Assuming they don't break or kill your leader or hurt your leader.
So I'm just sort of looking for like the strategy of doing the least work possible and still winning. Just for
I mean,
any
I
other
think
reason.
there's other ways to do the math, right? I mean, you can dominate your opponent's objective,
Hmm.
grab one of the side objectives, and just have and basically just dispute your own objective. Even with just like one guy.
Yeah.
And that knocks him down to, so he gets 4 out of that, and you get 6 out of that.
I mean,
So there's a bunch of different interesting ways to kind of do the math here. But if you want that kind of big pot of 4 bonus points, you have to completely clear off your opponent's objective.
I mean, honestly, one thing I was noticing is any scenario with this 25% ending condition, I often will play it as if the scenario doesn't even exist, and then focus on it about 50%. That way you can really concentrate your force on just destroying and demolishing your opponent, because you have plenty of time. And the best part is these objectives are so close to each other that it's not hard to disperse really quick once the scenario starts to get to that ending point. So yeah, you're not trying to break the opponent's force for the actual victory conditions, but just the simple act of destroying your opponent also makes it harder for them to achieve the basic mission objective, since they have less models to work with. So I think in this, I would spend the first hour of a tournament game, I wouldn't even worry about the objective. I would strong side, hit flanks, whatever, and just do everything possible to just wipe out an opponent, because I know I'd have time. I might mix this up if someone's blockading. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that in situations like this, you also get the advantage of your shields, in that since you get to control when the game ends, isn't one of those one to random endings. You can actually bring your opponent down to 30% and then start shielding all over, and then just walk over to the objectives, and then force the game to last as many turns as you want.
Yeah, the only caveat I'd say on that is that one strategy that you can't adopt is in this scenario is kiting, because you can kite yourself into a position where you're never going to get the objective points anymore, because these objectives are all kind of concentrated near the middle. This is a scenario where it's very difficult to have a kiting army. And because if you concentrate and play, if you ignore the scenario in this list and you've got a kiting army and you kite and you end up kind of near the back edge of the board and you've kind of surrendered all the objectives to your opponent, you can quarter your opponent and still lose just because you haven't had time to get back to that objective on the far side of the board.
Actually, just in case we have any listeners who don't understand that historical combat term, but go ahead and describe kiting.
I'm not sure kiting is a historical combat term.
I don't know. Or maybe it's a gaming term. But...
yeah, I think it's a gaming term. So basically, kiting is a situation where your army behaves like a kite blowing in the wind and kind of blows, it kind of goes back from your opponent when you're using your ranged weapons to kind of whittle him down, never letting him come to grips, and constantly dribble casualties off him. And then once you've and only charging in kind of once you've gotten him to the point where you have a combat advantage over him. So, the classic kiting armies are, armies like Rohan with a bunch of throwing spears where the cav can go back. The mounted Rivendell lists with their bows that can kind of, fall back at 5 inches a turn and continue to shoot. Armies with a bunch of foot throwing spears like Corsairs can do it well. But basically things that try and inflict casualties by avoiding and shooting rather than going in and fighting in a scrum.
I'd say if you are all mounted, you probably have a better shot than if you're definitely an infantry list, pushing back and shooting. So, because at least all mounted, you could possibly do some heroic combat slingshot shenanigans. But yeah, I mean, I agree that these things are so close together and all that. If you give someone way too much room to blockade you off of them, you're talking about a real long game trying to get back onto them. So especially if you abandon your personal one on your deployment half.
Well, even if you don't abandon it, right? Even if you just if you don't make an attempt to kind of get some guys over to your opponent's objective where all the points are, if you, because you only get 1 point for your own objective, if you, kind of lose the 2 ones on the center line and don't get anybody to your opponents, you will lose the game.
Yeah.
So would you kind of treat it like Devin said for the first hour? Is it kind of almost like you're playing to the death for the first hour and then you start to focus on the objective?
Well,
In a sense?
except into the death, you might be walking backwards and actually staying away from the center.
Yeah.
But here,
You're going to be.
Well, I guess when I say to the death, I don't mean points wise, but I mean more like you're just focused on killing, kind of almost in the first. Okay.
Yeah, I mean an aggressive style of killing. So it's going to definitely be more close combat oriented. And not to say that you couldn't move back a little bit, but you definitely play into what Matt was describing, which is a very dangerous game where, they can possibly, especially if they can suicide themselves, if they have a way of doing that, they can possibly end it where you can't get to the back objective in time before the game ends. So
the historical military term that does apply to this scenario is the advantage of the central position, which for those of you who are not quite up on your Clausewitz, is a concept that came out of the Napoleonic Wars of having somebody who's got an inferior numerical force who can defeat a superior force that's dispersed by kind of taking a position in the center where he can attack different places in sequence. And even though he's got less guys, can overwhelm smaller chunks of his opponent one at a time. And this scenario is all about the advantage of the central position, where you can kind of get into that space in the middle of the board where any one of these objectives is within 12 inches of you. And then you can take that kind of big chunk of your army and, hopefully quickly move it to one objective, kill a bunch of stuff, leave a couple of guys there, go to the next objective, kill a bunch of stuff, and leave a couple of guys there to secure it, go to the next objective, that type of thing.
You're going to see in gaming, we often call that piecemealing. And then you're going to also hear another word, strong siding, which is essentially a deployment gimmick where you'll drop a couple 1-drops and then take your whole force and chunk it right on the flank and just wipe it out that way, which is effectively all of what Matt's just doing. And honestly, in this scenario, I'd probably consider strategies like that, depending on the terrain and my opponent's force and all that. But yeah, I just can't see me like actually bothering with it. The more you try to disperse your army to try to take all the 4 points all the time, you give right into what Matt's talking about. Like you're just handing your opponent the game, in my opinion, which is why I just would be like, all right, ignore the objectives. Obviously don't go too far away from them, but, just take out your opponent. And that's how, as far as the other points, the enemy leader and the force breaking, I think just by doing the strategy, you get the 1 point for force breaking, which is great. So if that's your strategy, then you literally only have to accomplish what? The back scenario. And as long as you don't actually give them your scenario, then they basically can't win. Am I thinking of that right? Well, I guess if they get both side objectives and then they take
if they take out your leader.
Yeah. So if they get the 3 objectives, if they get your objective and the 2 center ones, that's 8 points there. It's if you just get your opponent's objectives and break him and kill his leader, you only get 7. So basically, if you secure, and by secure you mean wipe out every opponent's figure within 3 inches of his objective, and you can I just want to see. And you can do the same thing to the 2 side objectives. You win the game.
I think that's it, though. As far as otherwise we play the scenario. Unless Mick is randomly mathing out some final thoughts, that's pretty much the kind of and obviously you have to keep in mind that none of us have actually played this scenario. As far Matt, have you ever played this scenario?
I have actually played this scenario.
You have? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Matt's played it once. I've never played it, not in a tournament format, and I don't think Mick has either. Tim, have you played this?
No.
No. So this is definitely like analyzing it from a paper perspective. I think that a lot of the advice we're giving is from experience on scenarios like domination or capture and control. A lot of the other ones that operate very similarly to this. I think capture and control probably being the most similar, except you can't abandon the objective really. But yeah, in fact, now I'm mentioning capture. I mean, I guess capture and control's kind of very different than the fact that I think it has a middle objective, and then it does, and the objectives are a little further apart, and there's no real emphasis to go toward a specific one. So
I think this is going to be my favorite objective-based scenario, and out of all the scenarios, I think this is going to be my favorite.
it's definitely different enough from capture and control.
The objective, I mean, with the exception of the central objective, the objectives, I believe, are in the same place as in capture and control.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, okay. So they're
or at least they are on a 4x4 board. Yeah, on a 4x4 board, the objectives are in the same place.
So
stretch that to a 6x4 board, they'd be in different places.
Yeah. I mean, the game is now commonly accepted to be only on a 4x4. So I think the only time you see it different is like Throne of Skulls. It's the only time, which is not a competitive tournament anyway. So then in that case, all right. So basically, it's kind of like capture and control in the most sense. Just a lot more aggro on that final back objective, which means that if an opponent wanted to play very defensively, if you just wanted to tie, and that's all you really cared about, I suppose. No, I mean, if they're playing defensive, you can't play defensive on the scenario.
No.
You have to go for at least the one on the other side plus your own.
I think what I like about this so much is you can't play one way. You have to be protective of your objective. You have to go for the middle ones, and you have to try and go for the big points on the far one as well. It really makes you do everything.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty interesting that way. So I guess
I'm a big fan of it.
We all had lists that we kind of theory crafted to figure out, all right, try to make a balanced list, like nothing that's only designed purpose built for the scenario, but it's ones that would excel in this scenario, or at least kind of cater to it. So Tim, who'd you want to go first in sharing those lists?
I want to hear Mick's list first.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So earlier Matt was talking about an Angmar list. And then Dave and Devin said, "Well, that's probably going to be Matt's list for today." Well, it's my list for today.
What plot twist?
Dun dun dun.
However, it does not include Dwemer Lake, although it could. It does include the other ring wraith. So I have the Tainted on Fell Beast, 11 orcs with a mixture of either shields or spears or bows. The bows are coming in because of what Matt said at the beginning of the episode. So I would probably put like 2 or 3 bows. 1 Spectre. Then the second warband is 1 Barrow White, 10 orcs, shields or spears, and 1 Spectre. Third warband is an orc captain on a warg with shield, 9 orcs with shields or spears, 1 orc with a banner and spear, 1 naked orc, and 1 wild warg. And then the final warband is Gulavar with 12 orcs with shields or spears or bows. So this comes up to 51 models and 7 points of might.
All right. So an actual no might. Well, it's not no might actually. It's
well,
not
no. There's plenty.
It's not even close to no might.
I wanted a no might Angmar list.
As far as Angmar goes, there's like impossibly high amounts of might.
Oh, bad. Well, so I mean, generally, as far as why you're seeing this being good in this scenario, what's your take? Like, I mean,
so just as we were talking about now, this list. Well, first of all, numbers are good for this scenario because you will eventually want to be controlling multiple objectives. You want to be concentrating on taking out chunks of your opponents, for which Gulavar and the Titan are really good for. The Barrow White does its thing. Our captain on the warg is there just to add the heroic marches for later in the game. So once you've concentrated on actually destroying your opponent, if you then need to split into smaller chunks to capture the objectives where you're far away from, you can either march with him. You can actually run 15 because he's in the warg. Gulavar and Tated are also good for for those like flying attacks. So there's a lot of mobility here, and a lot of like various tricks with specters, with the tainted, with barrow wide, and just high numbers. So I think it sort of covers all grounds. Obviously, orcs die very quickly in combat, but hopefully opponent is going to be dying quicker thanks to all the big toys here.
So I guess you're yeah. Go ahead.
Is there something you'd be afraid of to go against your list in this scenario?
Yeah, I would be really afraid to lose Tainted on like turn 1 because then I would end up with just Gulliver and some orcs, and I would probably get wiped out by pretty much everybody. So yeah, I would be afraid of things like Legolas, yeah, or the likes of Aragorn's, anything that has let's say 2 or 3 big heroes might be a bit of an issue. It will all depend sort of on how well Gulliver does and how well I manage to nullify my opponent's bigger heroes, because essentially Gulliver and the Tainted are kind of glass cannons, and they are very easy to lose if you make a mistake. So really, like I'm potentially more afraid of just my own rustiness and just
a Corona rust.
Yeah, losing things in my own stupid way, and then just throwing the game away on that basis.
Okay. Unless there's any other final thoughts, I want to move it over to Matt.
All right. So I dedicate this list to Games Workshop's newest games designer, Dan Entwistle. Dan, this list is for you. So this is the Grand Army of the South, Legendary Legion. And the Army General is the Mumak war leader riding the War Mumak of Farharad. And in his, and this is the Fight 5 Super Mumak. And in his warband are 11 Haradrim warriors with bows, 5 Haradrim warriors with spear, and 1 serpent guard. And then the warband number 2 is Suladan the Serpent Lord on armored horse. And with him are 3 serpent riders. And warband number 3 is a Mahood King on camel with the war spear and a shield. And with him are 2 Mahood raiders with war spear. So obviously the concept here is that one thing I kind of figured out, because I actually like put a Mumak down on the table. If you put a Mumak in the center of the board, he could go to any one of these 4 objectives in one turn. And obviously
wipe out whatever
that's his job, right? Is he can get, I mean, especially if he calls a heroic march, he can cover one of these objectives, any one of these objectives in one turn. And obviously, kind of that's his job is, I will go and I will clear everybody off the opponent's objective, and I will turn around and clear everybody off of whatever objective they're going for. And, he can kind of hang out near the center of the board and kind of choose which direction he goes in order to do that. And, I really, by the way, was seriously debating kind of how to do that. I mean, so my alternative list here made Suladan, the army leader, drop the Mumak war leader in favor of a regular Mumak.
Can you do that?
Yeah, you can.
Legion?
Yeah, you can.
Oh,
well, you just need to have
to pick him.
No, you just need to have a Mumak in the list.
Oh, all right.
So I dropped him in favor of a regular Mumak with the whatever that the Tribe Master upgrade was: Sigils of Defiance, Tusk Weapons, and Repelling Lines, and then had slightly larger warbands, and basically all around, and some more guys on foot, and that gives you you sacrifice the 12-inch heroic move damping zone that comes with the Mumak War Leader, which is a big drop. I mean, that's a terrifying thing to have in this list. But
especially in this scenario where everything's like,
yeah, exactly. But what you get in exchange for that is you get the repelling lines, so that what you can do is you can take the Mumak and you can clear off an objective, have a couple guys parachute down from the Mumak, turn the Mumak, go in another direction, clear off the next objective, have two guys parachute down, and basically keep going that. And it gives you the ability to take your archers and use them to kind of hold the objectives after you clear them, which is something that because you can't buy repelling lines for the Mumak War Leader is something that you can't do.
What I love about that whole Mumak idea is that the opponent like normally would just be like, all right, run, and get to the center, other parts of the board, but they can't do that. They just kind of have to dodge and evade you, but just slightly. Like they can't actually leave the area. So this is one of those, if I was fighting against Matt, this is one of those ones where I'd pray that I get to choose the board first. So that way I can flip the board in such a way where my objective, like the one he has to get from me, is like in woods or something. So,
yeah, although the Mumak can now go into woods, it just can't go over trees that are more than 2 inches high, which is the tricky bit.
This is why I would play it in your tournament. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, this is definitely a terrain sensitive list. But,
big criticism though, Matt. Not enough camels. I'm disappointed. I want to see more camels.
Well, I mean, you're spending 400 points on that Mumak War Leader, and that's before you put guys in the Howdah. So,
it's only 400. What are you talking about? It's only half your cost.
That is insane, by the way. Like, I did the math, and it does point out appropriately, but oh my God.
The Balrog is 50 points cheaper.
Here's the thing. Yeah, that's true. I mean, but here's the thing. The Mumak War Leader can kill 400 points of models in one turn.
He could, yeah.
You know, if you get the rolls you need to, and you get it.
Especially since he can call heroic combats if you're in the.
You cannot call heroic combats.
Well, you can't unless you're in a fight with the enemy leader. You can call heroic combat.
I don't think war beasts can ever call heroic combat.
Like ever. No, because I know that the rule is they don't respond, but then his rule overrides the normal rule, stating that for that one combat, when he's in combat with the enemy leader, his heroic actions affect the Mumak.
But
normally the reason is
I think it only says, I'll check the rule, but I think it only says that the heroic strike affects the Mumak, but
okay. So, then if it says a heroic strike, but if it just says heroic actions.
Oh, God. If he could do heroic combats. Then,
I think he can do a free heroic combat. I remember reading it one. Like,
I'll take a look at I'll take a look at the rule book. Because I was reading this the other day and I saw, I refreshed my memory. It's like, oh, yeah, you can't do heroic combats. But my God, if he can do heroic combats.
I think, Devin, you might be right.
Yeah, I think it's just heroic. But, I mean, the problem is it's the enemy leader. So, theoretically, the enemy leader is going to be something that can heroic strike. But if it's like mixed list where it's a tainted, you just ram him into the tainted and do a heroic combat.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Have someone else heroic strike for you and just like run through everything.
Well, I mean, I assume also mixed leader is going to be Gullivar.
I mean, they're both going to die very quickly.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Gullivar does not want to fight a Mumak.
I don't know many things that do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have like Aragorn with heroic strike or something. But yeah, I think I really think he does. But yeah, I mean, just focusing on the scenario while Matt finds out that I'm correct.
But by the way, another interesting synergy here is with Suladan and the Mumak. Mm-hmm. When you keep them within 3 inches of each other, Suladan gives his banner to the Mumak, so the Mumak gets an extra die, and 6 then inches. The Mumak gives his 3-inch awesome presence to Suladan, which stacks with the banner.
Wait, no, it says banner effect though, right? Like
no.
It just says reroll.
It stacks with a banner. Yes.
So does the awesome presence is it
Mumak
like a
himself?
reroll?
The Mumak himself does not get it, but everybody within 3 inches gets an additional reroll that stacks with a banner, which means that Suladan gets 3 dice plus 1 for charging, plus 1 for his banner, plus 1 for the Mumak, 6 dice in the duel.
Like
The
drop
only
Even
way
3
to
inches.
stack with the banner is you have to say that you get a reroll and
Yeah,
not state it counts as a banner.
It specifically says it stacks with the banner.
Oh man!
Wow.
All right, that is an awesome presence then. Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
so-
let me before I go in and check the hero combat thing, I'll double check that. But I remember looking at that.
No, actually, you're right. May reroll however yeah, it's cumulative effects of the banner. Yep.
I just checked the heroic combat one.
Yep.
So the making of a king, your army's leader may declare a free heroic action at the start of any fight phase in which they are engaged in combat with the enemy leader.
Yeah.
If the War Mumak leader is your leader, he may still use this ability while set up his Royal War Mumak, in which case the Mumak will be affected as if it had been one to declare the heroic action.
Yeah, that's a free heroic combat.
Yeah, the issue is going to be
That is a
though.
free heroic combat.
The issue is going to be though if the rule on Mumax, and that's what I'm about to check, says that a war beast may not benefit from a heroic combat.
I think it says it can't benefit from heroic actions called by because it also counts as heroic strike. Counts for the heroic move.
Let me double here.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and check that. Because you thought this was a scenario review, guys, but we actually reviewing the world.
We just want to review animals. That's what we're doing. We're changing this to animal reviews.
But obviously, anything like this. So while
because I think the reason they wrote it that way is because otherwise you could send like random hero. If one guy was fighting the Mumak, you could send random hero in, call a hero combat, and then the Mumak gets to move again.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And I think
I wonder if that's possible. All right, Matt's going to review that.
Yeah, I'll figure that out.
Someone who plays Dan Intwist was like screaming at the screen, like
that's right.
or if he's listening to the podcast, screaming into his podcast. But I mean, obviously, the big note here is that any models that can clear off objectives, con chariots, or war beasts are great in this scenario because I mean, Jesus, who wants to see Smaug play in this scenario? Sounds like a nightmare.
He just covers all 4 objectives all at once. For his
well, he can't quite do that, but
he's an 18-inch base. They're 12 inches.
What's his width?
So he can't do all. No, he definitely can't do all 4. He can do 3, maybe 2, definitely 2, but maybe 3. I doubt 3. But
well, he has to be within 3 inches, though, right? Just 3 inches, not on top.
Oh, he only has to be 3. Yeah, that's true. So he'll just burn everyone else.
No, Devin, they're not 12 inches from each other. They're
6 inches from the middle.
Aren't they?
It's like the middle point.
Aren't they 12 inches from the middle?
Are they 12 inches from the middle or 6 inches?
Yeah.
Oh, this is actually pretty wide.
Yeah, one of these is placed exactly 12 inches from the center.
Oh man! Someone in the comment section is gonna ruin me on that one. I've been talking about how close they are.
Well, I was just thinking to myself. I was like, he's been saying they're close. I'm like, I'm pretty sure.
You guys couldn't correct me about that ages ago. Gosh, I mean, this whole podcast, everyone's gonna be like, Devin's.
Well, wait a minute. You said a 12-inch radius circle. You
do
understand what a radius is?
I meant diameter. You know what?
We also teach math here.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we just teach
I
it
failed
badly.
geometry class.
All right, so here's the rule. A war beast may only benefit from a heroic march or heroic move that has been declared by their commander and may not benefit from a heroic combat unless otherwise stated.
Well, that says that you can now benefit from heroic actions.
Yeah, geez. Does that actually mean does that qualify as?
Did we just break the game?
No. Well, it's
I just found my new army.
It's a very specific circumstance. You have to be in the combat with an enemy leader.
With the leader,
and you have to kill the leader because you're doing heroic combat. So it's a very, very specific circumstance.
Yeah, that's true. And probably what you're going to be calling if you're in combat with the leader
probably
is heroic strike anyway.
Yeah. But I think this is a very niche thing where, like, if you happen to contact Denethor, you can be like, what do you know? Like, I can run over the rest of your So.
Yeah.
Dope!
Yeah, except then if you happen to contact Denethor, he's going to get 4 strength 9 hits, so probably die before the company even starts.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Well, I mean, the other hand,
gonna have to charge you a broken mind.
If you run into somebody and like your impact hits, or if Denethor charges you, for example, or if you run into somebody with a bunch of impact hits and you get him down to the point where he's burned all his fight and he's got 1 wound left, then maybe you want to try this out.
Okay.
All right, so let's just see here. I just want to reread this rule.
Everyone's going to be like,
let's
we don't
see.
play Mummix. Move on. Oh, I guess, as my defense, the fact that
Oh, I'm looking in the wrong place. I got to
Yeah,
look in the Legendary Legion because this only works in the Legendary Legion.
as my defense to me not realizing until just now how far away the objectives actually
What a radius was?
Yeah, I've never played the scenario, and my comparisons to capture and control were theoretical. So
It sounded good.
All right. So I have now read this. I now think this is an exception to the rule. It's in the rule book. And yes, if you can call a heroic combat with the Mumak if you were in combat with the leader.
Yeah.
You hear it here. Don't listen to FAQs. We said it. So
now we have to find an FAQ on it in the 20 pages of FAQs.
We said it first, so it's a thing. That's the end of the story.
Well, at least in the FAQs, you have a search button.
Yeah, that's true.
in like 3 books that we went through, there was.
But Mick, we don't need it. We just said it. It's official. That's how this works.
Yeah, true. Let me just.
We have to get Dan Entwistle now on the podcast.
I mean, I have to say, once Dan Entwistle is actually involved in Games Workshop, then our interpretation will be correct.
Yes. Oh, expect Mummix to be so much better now.
Yep.
I'm hoping for this. I'm excited.
I wouldn't mind seeing a Mumak every once in a while.
I want to see Mummix in competitive play. I want to have the same look Theoden had when he first saw them.
I mean, I have to say the Royal that Mumak War Leader is competitive. Scenario or not. I mean, things can obviously go wrong for the army and it can go down, but if the dice kind of go right for it on the heroic move type situation, it can take down like any army in the game. Just because it can just trample it into the earth. I mean, things have to go right for it. I mean, if things go wrong for it, it will die horribly. But it's one of these lists where, or it's one of these armies where, unless you're running into like the King of the Dead or something like that. Actually, I'm not quite sure it could take down the King of the Dead, but maybe it could. Who knows? If any Mumak can, it's this one.
Okay. We will move into Devin's list next.
All right. So all of you out there know how much I don't like Balrogs, so I figured I'd make a Balrog list. And for those who are curious on why, I just think they're not fun. Not that they're overpowered. Don't think that.
Hashtag Balrog for 2020.
Yep, they're just terrible. Redesign their profile, please, Dan. So I have the Legendary Legion that just came out, and I have the Balrog, and he's leading 16 goblins with spear and shield, front rank shield, back rank spear, and then I have a drum. I have the black shield drum though. So note in his warband, there's no actual Gundabads. I probably would put a couple in there, but whatever, I didn't. So the captain, I have a captain, goblin captain leading 5 spear, 5 shield, and then he has 2 Gundabad black shields. It's purely just for that drum. So those of you screaming at the comments, why would I have those? It's replacements for the drummers. And then I have another captain who has just 3 Gundabad, just Gundabad black shields. Once again, just for the drum, but this is an easy 1-drop, and I just had to fill points. And then I guess the last things I have is 2 Gundabad shamans, and they are leading spear and shield 3 and 3 each, so 6 each. So essentially that gives me 50 models. No bows, but I have 2 captains, 2 Gundabad shamans, and a Balrog. The Gundabad shamans pretty obviously just break any hero that I really don't like. So if I'm seeing an Aragorn or something like that, that one hero, I'm going to make sure I absolutely shatter him so he's not a threat to my precious Balrog that will then rampage throughout everything. Got plenty of might to kind of work around with. And the best part about the Balrog being in this scenario is I'm fearless everywhere pretty much. And I'm also not going to have a problem with my 12-inch radius on the drum. So because this scenario, I mean, yes, it's a little further apart than I originally planned for it to be. But
remember,
knowing
drum's battlefield wide.
Oh, it is battlefield wide. Yeah, in this Legion. Oh, well, then now I can do whatever with it. But even with it being further away, I honestly think that just helps me because now I can concentrate on fewer objectives that I don't need to worry about. 50 models is not great for an army that's just all goblins, but it's not terrible either, especially since considering I have a Balrog in it. But yeah, I mean, I think pretty much in this point, plow through an army. Once again, focus on just breaking the enemy army and trying to destroy it. Wreak as much havoc as possible with my Balrog. Best part is you cannot break you have to like wound my general in order to get any general points out of this thing. Oh no, that's right. It doesn't count for killing the general if I'm more than 4 wounds.
You
get the points for wounding. So if you wound him once, which you'll probably end up doing. But otherwise, the other 2 points are pretty much denied to you as long as you do not kill my Balrog. Which means I can just, focus on havoc and then right at the last minute, use heroic marches and such to get to your back objective, make sure the Balrog's cleared that out. I mean, there's not a lot of ways to really explain this list. It's sort of a bubble army, and I'll probably only go for the back objective, try to keep mine safe, and maybe one side objective, but I'm not going to get greedy, to be honest.
Let me ask, based on the fact that the Balrog is 350 points, I actually don't think 50 models is that bad because of how many points he ends up taking up. I mean, you're going to take the drum, which is another 75. So you're already at 425 at that point. I mean, there's only so many models you can take. I mean,
and keep in mind, I could actually design this in a way where you could probably play with the points a lot. And I think I'm actually down a few points, to be honest, because what happened was I had 746 points, and I was like, throwing a captain and 3 blue Gundabad warriors. So it's possible I could play with it to get more models in it if I even wanted to. But yeah, I think 50 models. You're right, Tim. Like for a Balrog being in the list, 50 models isn't terrible. It's just the fact that a lot of my army is defense 4, half of it almost.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the annoying thing. But I mean, you accept that when you take the Balrog because of what he does. I mean,
and there's a potential that you probably would mix this up even further, where you wouldn't do 50-50 spear and shield, so that way you can do a little bit more wraparound shenanigans. You lose your army bonus with this army, I believe. No, they actually just get +1 fight around the Balrog. That's right. Yeah. So you probably might take Prowlers if you can.
That's what I was. Prowlers take you to fight 4 if you do that. Plus, you have throwing weapons at that point.
Yeah. So I might have done more of them. I mean, I really quickly wrote the list. I think that I probably, less Gundabads, maybe in fact swap all the Gundabads for Prowlers, except for the 2. Like I said, you do need some replacements for the drum. But other than that, I mean, the list pretty much, this is the type of list that almost writes itself depending on whether you want more Gundabad shamans or more captains. Because there's not much else. I mean, I'm not putting a cave troll in the list. Unless someone out there thinks I should put a cave troll on the list.
I know that you've talked about how this list seems to be very, very good. But I think what's great about this list is it really doesn't let you spam out on numbers like other Horde lists does. Like 50 models is still very good by all means. But because you can't take 70 or 80, it really makes it balanced in that regard to not being ridiculous where you have a Balrog and 70 goblins.
Yeah, we're trying to actually mix it up here on this podcast. We were tempted to just be like, bring Goblin Town again and just continue to say that for every scenario until we get to Lords of Battle, in which case you still might be able to still bring Goblin Town. But yeah, no, I mean, definitely mixing it up. Yes, you're right. This is a different style Horde list that stops you from totally hoarding. I mean, obviously, I think in a normal list with a Balrog in it, if you were bringing normal Moria, you'd want bats. And maybe a second threat, because that's one thing this list definitely lacks. I mean, all of its threat is in like one spot. So granted, what I would probably do is focus fire on whipping heroes. We'll burn one hero, get him off of his horse, and then whipping another hero that, bring him in, crush him, use 2 shamans to shatter like the 3rd hero. So if you're like playing, I don't know, Last Alliance or something, or mixed list, I don't know, you just try to, just break down the heroes. And once the heroes are broken, there's nothing threatening the Balrog, in which case, hopefully you're not playing an army of half trolls or something that can just rip to shreds my goblins or something. But
yeah, I mean, I guess the only problem with this is I think this list is still going to be vulnerable to an avoid the Balrog strategy, where you can kind of go and threaten, if you kind of split off, leave like a core of kind of guys around your own objective, and then take your heroes and the rest of your army and kind of threaten at least the 2 side objectives, then, your Balrog can again only be in one place. And if he goes toward one side, then you take the other side and you go toward the Balrog's home objective. Whereas if he goes for your objective, then your two sides, you clear off the two sides, and then you split and you go for your opponent's objective, and then the Balrog has to figure out kind of which way to go on the way back. That's
true, especially without. I mean, I only have like 2 captains of March, so it's not like you can easily kind of toss back
and forth between the two. Yeah, exactly.
And this is one of those lists that, like, now I'm talking about a list I haven't played yet since it came out during the pandemic, and a list I haven't played in a scenario I haven't played. So this is Theory Hammer at its finest. But that's pretty much how I would actually, just something I'd consider. I'd be like, you know what, let me try this out. I'd be interested. So
I just want to take my Mumak against Goblin Town. in this scenario,
the one army Goblin Town fears.
Matt finishes on round 3.
Honestly, though, I wonder if it even fears it, because like once he door stops you with the Goblin King, Gollum jumps in, and then just try to kill the Mumak. Like
there's like
a bunch of
attacks against you.
Huh? Yeah, exactly.
Like 70 attacks.
And then
Mumak rolls his 4 dice. Mumak rolls like 4 dice.
That Gollum Goblin King combo is just gross.
Yeah. I mean, well, the question is, can you run over Gollum with the Mumak? Because you do get the free heroic. I mean, you get the free heroic strike against the Goblin King.
Well, the answer would be yes. You can run over Gollum. I mean, if you actually
you have to get him into Gollum to get.
But the Goblin King is always going to be in front. Like it's just how it's going to be. So the Goblin King will be protecting him. It's just with the Blubbering Mass, he has the most potential to survive an impact hit.
Yeah.
All right, and now we're going to move on to my list. I decided after looking at the scenario that not only did I want to take this army, but I just think it would do relatively well at this kind of mission, which is the Cirith Ungol Legendary Legion. So my leader is Shagrat, and he's leading 12 Mordor Uruk-hai with shields. I have Gorbag with shield, and he's leading 5 Orc Warriors with spears, 1 Orc Warrior with spear and banner. I have an Orc Captain with shield, leading 6 Orc Warriors with spears. I have an Uruk-hai Captain with shield, leading 12 Mordor Uruk-hai with shields. I have another Orc Captain with shield, leading 6 Orc Warriors with spear. And finally, I have Shelob. So it brings me up to 54 models. I have 12 might, and I have 5 heroes. I technically have 3 marches if I need to use them. I also have 2 heroic strikes with Shagrat and Gorbag. And the main reason I took this list as well is, keep in mind, we don't know definitively. I know we talked about this in the podcast. This is assuming if I back up my spear with the Uruk-hai, I get the +1 to both to wound with those 2. So if it changed where I didn't get that, then
I don't think that is true.
Didn't we talk about this and we said
spear supports? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, remember
we talked about it and we went the other way.
They do not. Yeah, we actually all collectively agreed. Matt was correct that the spear supports do not benefit because it's worded literally the same way as the other rule. It just doesn't have the designer's note, which
that's fine. I mean,
any judge is going to rule against you with that argument. Like, it's such a solid argument.
Just let me believe, okay? Just let me believe.
I mean, I guess you could make the argument of like, well, if they really intended it, they would have written it there. But it looks like an omission, an accidental omission.
Okay, well, either way, I still think this list can do relatively well. So basically, the concept is pretty obvious. You have, the Mordor Uruk-hai with shields in the front, and the Orc Warriors with spear in behind. You have Shelob to kind of clean up some work, especially with their new bonuses. Shagrat, pretty solid hero for a leader. I mean, he's got 3/3/3, fight 5, strength 5, 3 attacks. If he can kill a hero, he gets another might point back because of that. And then, you got Gorbag. If you can get him on 2 people, fight 5 with 3 attacks. It's always good. And if Shagrat has more kills than him, which he should in theory, he's also going to get +1 to wound. So that'll be great for him as well.
Man, don't sleep on Gorbag, man. He'll have more kills. No.
It's the Gimli versus Legolas debate, isn't it? But yeah, so it can pretty much do everything where you can cover your back to make sure that they don't get the 4 points and you get your 1. It can kind of cut. So, for example, if I were to come up against, let's say, Devin's list, it's like Matt said, I would avoid the Balrog. And because I'd be fight 4, I'd try to chomp through as many troops as humanly possible, quickly as possible, to try to just get him down to 25%. And then hopefully I'd have enough models in all the positions to do so. He would probably kill my general with with the Balrog, but that's fine. That's only 2 points. So, he might slowly take away but I think with the fight 4, the strength 4, in the front, I think I'd take away the goblins pretty easily with Mick. The terror would be an annoyance for sure, with the -1 as well. But especially with the monsters. But I think if I could get enough points where Mick was charging me and I got a couple of guys in, I could chomp through a little bit, but the monsters would be scared. I'd be scared a lot of.
Yeah, whoa. You really forgot here about the fact that I have bows. You don't.
That's true.
So
Yeah, I was going to say that's one thing I would add to your list is I would add in at least a half dozen guys.
I was thinking about adding the spears with bows, but this worked out exactly.
You don't need bows. Look at my warrior army. No bows.
Well, and not only that, I mean, you could also just add in a few guys that just have bows, because remember, you need some guys for Shelob to eat.
Yep.
And orcs with bows are good guys for Shelob to eat, because once it kind of
anything else.
Yeah, well, once you come, I mean, the bows are useful when you're coming to grips, and then once you kind of come to grips, unless you're going to shoot into combat, then the bows become significantly less useful, and then they become you can't get trackers. No. Otherwise, I'd be saying that. But once you come to grips, then your orcs with bow become Shelob snacks.
Yeah, I'd probably be most scared of the mix out of everyone's, but then Matt's would just annoy me because of the whole, call out Horror move. That would just bother the crap out of me so much.
Mumaks are one of those weird.
Oops, there go another 12 Urukai.
That's one of those lists that you just can't make any mistakes against them. But once you actually capitalize on it, then it's it's once, like Matt said, it's really good when it's good and really bad when it's bad.
But I think it can kind of do. It's got a lot of models at 54. You've got a ton of might. You can march with 3 different captains to get to where you need to get, and you can kind of you can't do everything. It doesn't. It's kind of does everything besides shooting, basically.
Yeah.
Where it can defend, it can attack, it can move quickly, but it doesn't do anything exceptionally well. But
so just one other tip in using this list. We've found that, at least for us, kind of the ideal orc to Urukai ratio was about 2 to 3, between 2 to 3 or 3 to 4. And the reason being, assuming you can set it up this way, and it takes a little gimmicky, a little fiddly unit placement in order to do this. The way this list actually wants to fight is orc, Urukai, orc, Urukai, orc, Urukai, orc, Urukai with orc spears behind, so that you can get that +1. And
you can add more troops by doing that as well.
Yeah, you can add more troops when you do that. And, the Urukai that way kind of can go a long way toward toughing things out.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely seems like good points with the bows, and maybe adding a little bit more numbers without the Urukai. Because to be fair, the Mortal Urukai are 9 points with a shield. They're pretty expensive for something that's only defense 5 and can't really have anything besides an orc spear behind it.
Yeah, and if you have enough numbers, I mean, the fight value that you get with the Urukai is generally enough every other guy. The fight value and plus when you get that plus, if you can get that +1 to wound in there too, that's always sweet.
Okay. Let us know in the comments section what list you would leave for this scenario. If you, which of the 4 lists you like the best for it as well. We're interested to see who would win that. Leave us any thoughts on what you'd like us to review for future episodes as well, and any lists you'd like for us to review. We hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving.
Yep. I was just going to say before we go, because we're recording this actually the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I was about to say, this will be released.
You're going to hear it afterwards. We hope you had a very good Thanksgiving.
Had a good Thanksgiving.
I'm like, when are we releasing this?
and we hope you have a good and safe Christmas season.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.